Okay, TikTok, you wanted the crazy family drama, so here it is. About 6 years ago, I had no job, had just gotten out of a really bad breakup, and life pretty much sucked. So my cousin called, who was also my best friend, and she's like, hey, you should apply at my job, they're hiring. I'm like, cool, but the only problem is she lived 2.5 hours away, which means I would have to move. So I told her the only problem with that is I have no money to move. She's like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of you, you can stay with me, and when you get full time, then we can work things out. I really didn't want to do that because I didn't want things to get weird between us, but she insisted, so I did. Within 3 weeks of that phone call, I was moved up there with the job. The job was great, and for about the first 10 months of me living up there, we were great. We were having a blast living together, we were living it up. Except there was a guy that she had feelings for, that they were kind of in that will they, won't they won't admit they have anything, you know, that whole weird thing. I wasn't his biggest fan, but I was like, you know what, he's fine for her, whatever. Well, they broke up and he joined the military and left for boot camp. Right after that was when things started getting weird. I had just gotten full-time, so I had a lot of back bills to pay, but I was finally catching up. Then this new guy came into her life. I didn't like him from day one. There was too many red flags. But again, it's her choice, whatever. Before this guy, we used to hang out daily. I mean, we were best friends and cousins, so our lives revolved around each other a lot. Then this guy came around and she was like non-existent. She didn't want to hang out with me. She barely talked. I could tell something was wrong, but she wouldn't tell me what it was. I figured it was just kind of emotions from the past guy, but who knows, she wouldn't tell me, and she's the type of person that sometimes she needs some time before she tells me, which is fine. But she never ended up telling me until much later. About a year after he came around, he got a really bad fight with his mom, who kicked him out. So my cousin came to me, didn't ask, just told me he's moving in to a 500 square foot 1-bedroom apartment with us. I was not okay with this, but at this point, I was already planning on moving. So I told my landlord that I'd be moving out June 26th, which was about 2 months from that point, and that was that. June 10th, my grandpa very suddenly passed away. He was like a second father to me, so it was very hard. Instead of moving at that point, I went home for a little while before. A few days before Father's Day, though, which was going to be hard already, I got a text from him saying, you can't have your stuff until you pay us rent. By the way, I was the one who turned in the rent checks, and I was already paid for June. The full month, even though I wasn't going to be there the full month. So I told my dad, and he said, let's go up there tomorrow, the next day, surprise him, get your stuff, and just be done with it. Sorry, I'm running out of time. Like and comment for part 2. The next part's super juicy. So my dad and I make the drive up there. I walk in the house. This guy's making dinner, and my cousin's at work. All of my stuff was in the garage. He had changed the locks and would not let me in there. He continued to say that he would not give me access to the garage or my stuff until I pay him rent. At this point, I'm sick and tired of it, so I call the cops. While I'm on the phone with the cops, he calls the cops, and he says, and I quote, the previous tenant and her dad are here breaking and entering and vandalizing my apartment. The problem with this is he wasn't on the lease. They moved him in quietly under the radar, and I didn't say anything because I was already moving out. The maintenance guy for the apartment building saw the cops arrive and came over to check it out because he was the acting manager for the weekend. He knew me because I had dealt with him multiple times because I was always the one to call for maintenance or things like that, so he knew who I was. Anyways, the cops go talk to this guy, and he tells him their story. I tell the cops, all I want is my stuff. I am trying to move out. They will not give me access to my stuff, claiming I owe them rent. That's all I said to the cops. The maintenance guy told the cops that the boyfriend dude wasn't a tenant and therefore he was trespassing and that I should be allowed to have my stuff. This guy should not have changed the locks or anything. So with the cops' persuasion, this guy, the boyfriend, gave me access to the garage and I was able to get most of my stuff out. I probably could have pressed charges against the boyfriend for trespassing, but I didn't want to get into it more. I just wanted to go home. The next day was Father's Day. My mom made a post about how awesome my dad was, especially in light of his dad passing away just a few weeks prior. My cousin, her boyfriend, her brother, and her mom all cyberbullied us, especially my dad, on that post on Father's Day. My aunt, who had absolutely nothing to do with that night, was making claims that she had a police report saying that we vandalized the apartment and pictures to prove it. She and everybody else in that part of the family were never able to produce pictures or videos of us vandalizing the apartment. Just to make sure, I did call the police department and make sure that there wasn't any reports filed for that day, location, or event. Because when I left, none of us were pressing charges. I got my stuff and left. That was it. You'd think this was the end of the story, but it's not. There's one part left. Like and comment for part 3. Okay, last part, I promise. Monday morning, I get a call from the apartment manager. She asked me what happened. I tell her my side of the story. Then she tells me that the maintenance man had told her the whole story. She told me that because she had discovered that the boyfriend had been living there illegally and then claimed that he was a current tenant, she would no longer be signing a lease with him, which was supposed to happen that afternoon. That was their plan. They were going to sign a lease in my place and stay in that apartment. So when they came to sign the lease, instead of signing the lease, she would be giving them an eviction notice. On top of that, she said that if I needed to get back on the property, all I had to do was call her. She'd personally escort me into the apartment and make sure that everything went just fine. She had heard that my grandpa had passed away, so she said that if I needed any kind of recommendations for the next apartment I would be living in, to just give them her number. As for my cousin, we don't talk to that branch of the family anymore. They still claim that they had a police report and evidence of us vandalizing it when they didn't. About a year ago, I found out that the whole reason why she allowed our relationship to go down the toilet and she wanted to be done with me was because she thought that the first boyfriend had had an affair on her with me. Let me clarify. There was no affair. She suspected it because he was a douche, but there was no affair. So when I talked to her recently and tried to clarify the truth that there wasn't an affair or anything, she didn't want to hear it. Not at all. She just wanted to be mad. And when I asked her why she wouldn't come and talk to me when that's what she suspected, she said, because I was mad and I didn't want to talk to you. When all of this could have been avoided had she just talked to me and we had it out right then and there. But instead it had to go a year later with all sorts of other crap involved that we won't be able to get past. So before you judge someone based on something you think might have happened, talk to them first. You might find out that what you thought happened wasn't really what happened. And in turn, you might save what could be a lifelong friendship. So let's do better.
4 years ago, I did the 23andMe DNA testing for fun. And earlier this year, a guy messaged me on Facebook and on my LinkedIn and was letting me know, hey, we matched as half siblings on 23andMe. Were you adopted? Right away, logged into my account, confirmed we did match as half siblings. And we were looking more into the cousins and stuff we relate to, and they're all on my father's side, not my mother's. But it gets crazier because I reached out to all my family members, and the one matriarch of the family that's still alive since my grandma and great-grandma have passed away in the last year, and she refused to tell me anything. So, naturally knowing since that side of my family likes to disown people for being gay, I know something's wrong and they're not telling me, or something's up and they're not telling me. It's just kind of funny to me because all my life I thought I was probably adopted. I am nothing like my sister, nothing like my mother, nothing like my father. I am the black sheep. I will show you a picture of my family. I look nothing like anybody.
Story time about my messed up uncle, part 1. I knew I was a hard kid to handle from the beginning, but I did not deserve anything this man ever did to me. Anyways, my mom did not raise me the way that my family wanted me to be raised, which was in a Catholic household or a Christian household, whatever, going to the church. Sorry. Anyways, around the age of 9, he handed me his phone knowing it had dirty videos on it in the browser. He's one of the youngest out of 14 kids. I have a really big family. My mother was also the one that raised him, so, he had this motherly-son relationship with my mother. So I never had good feelings about him, and I do have some cousins that agree with me because they've seen and they are around the same age as him. He's around 40-something years old, so they have more experiences with him. He could never keep a woman, and I'm assuming because he was manipulative. Scary thing about it is that he was a foster parent. He's also worked with kids and runs a soccer league. Going back to the religion part, I am not baptized, but my family is really, really religious. But my mother wanted me to choose my own religion. He is a godly man, but I don't think so. Let me know if y'all want a part 2.
This is Family Drama, User submissions. Right after I found out I was pregnant with my oldest and on my birthday weekend, my ex-husband's sister trashed the house. She destroyed my birthday cake, smearing it all over the kitchen counters, and stole a large amount of my belongings. I was frustrated, so I asked her to clean up the mess, and she tried to push me down the stairs. My husband tried to get her to leave the house, and she beat him with a 2x4. I had to hide in the closet and call 911. We ended up getting a restraining order. When I was 6 months pregnant, my mother-in-law waited until I was sleeping to sneak the sister into the house. We lived in the basement. I woke up to her there despite a restraining order, and she then spent an hour and a half calling me every name in the book because her daughter was just tired and wanted to nap with her mom. My husband's best friend ended up calling the police, and because they were called, there was a bad verbal altercation, including the officers, and we were kicked out.
My crazy family story time. I reached out to my youngest sister, Frances, saying, hey, I need to give you the heads up of what everything's kind of going down, because even though we never got along as kids, you've always been very kind to me as an adult. And I owe you at least a heads up that there's a shitstorm coming your way. Long story short, she was very kind and said, I don't necessarily understand it, but I can absolutely call your kid by their chosen name and their chosen pronouns. And that's all that I was asking for. That's all I was looking for. And we had a really good conversation. And I found some dirt on the family that I had never heard about that is juicy and delightful. So I'm going to be making a couple of videos about some of those. I got her permission to use it. So expect some extra juicy family drama stories. My crazy family story time, but this is not about me, this is about my sister Katie. So Katie was the oldest, and she basically had to raise us kids when my mom wasn't there. And for any oldest siblings out there, you'll probably understand this and relate to this, where you have to have all of the responsibility, but none of really like the reward or the recognition that comes along with it. And asking, a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid to basically be a mom and raise a bunch of other siblings is a recipe for all kinds of fucked up shit that's really not Katie's fault at all. But we loved our sister Katie. Like, she would feed us, she would rock us to sleep, she would bandage our owies. Like, she was great. She was legitimately great. And my mom was weirdly jealous about this. Like, at bedtime, we would go to my sister Katie to be tucked in. My mom would get angry about this and, like, take us from my sister Katie and insist that she got to do the bedtime song and sing us and rock us to sleep. But really, we weren't looking up to her. We were always looking up to my sister Katie.
I'll tell you a story about my mother. And since she is close to retiring, I don't think that this is going to be like a really big deal that I'm talking about this. So my mom had a friend in her 30s that she used to hang out and do stuff with all the time. Her kids would play with us and vice versa. And this lady was going through a terrible divorce. It wasn't going very well. And the guy that she used to be married to, so her ex-husband was actually getting together with this new wife, blah, 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 blah. And so because they wanted to get back at him for being such a piece of you know what, my mom and her decided to drive out in the middle of the night to this construction site where his new house was being built, and they knew which house it was. So they snuck into this house that was literally just like wood and, just like the beginnings of a house. Like, carpet hadn't been laid down or anything like that. So they go inside and they start in the master bedroom and they urinate on the floor in every room of that house. My mom's fucking crazy.